Hey, it's Seyko with On Nittany Lions, and I'm here with Dylan Callghan-Croley. You know him from Penn State Rivals, HappyValleyInsider.com. Penn State wins 38-15 over the visiting Mountaineers of West Virginia. And Dylan, I mean, this was a game I would describe as gritty, not pretty, really. I mean, Drew Allar looked pretty,
yeah,
right?
He looked pretty good.
Over 300 yards. The multiple touchdowns. I think he's the first quarterback to do this in a season opener since the 90s, since Kerry Collins did it actually against West Virginia, had a really good game to start his career. So it's kind of deja vu almost in a sense. But overall, the game was a little, it lacked that luster that I wanted to see out of a Penn State dominating win, because I thought we were going to get that today.
Yeah, it definitely wasn't a game that, Penn State came out here and dominated all four quarters or all facets of the game. There's definitely things they're going to have to work on in this week and in the weeks going forward. But, for week one against a Power 5 opponent, it's a pretty good win for Penn State, a nice confidence builder going forward. Like you said, Drew came out, looked the part of the quarterback that we thought he was going to be. I think he finished 21 for 29, 320 yards, 3 touchdowns. You can't really ask for more out of Drew. He made some really pretty passes out there tonight. KLS had a nice game. Curtis Jacobs did. The defense, it wasn't always pretty like the offense, but
not pretty.
At the end of the day, Penn State's defense, if you allowed 16 points in the game, just over 300 yards, but that last touchdown by West Virginia was a lot of Penn State's second-team defense. So you take out that drive, and it looks even better for the Nittany Lions tonight.
Well, I'll even take that a step further, Dylan, is the fact that Penn State, I think, you could argue that despite the field goals being missed, you had the 2 missed field goals, you could argue that Penn State left 2 touchdowns off the board. They had first and goal from the 7. They had an open receiver in the end zone that Drew almost had actually picked off. I think he was targeting Keandre Lambert-Smith. But you add 14 points on top of the total of 38 that they had. You take that to 52. You take off the backup defense touchdown. This could have really been a 52-6 deficit. So I think the box score tells a bigger story than this overall scoreboard does today.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. The box score says Penn State pretty much dominated this game, and that's it. Didn't always feel like it, but in the grand scheme of things, they really did. The offense was moving along throughout the game. I mean, just 2 punts from Riley Thompson, and like you said, a lot of missed opportunities. I think that's really the big key if you're looking at negatives from this game, is just the missed opportunities offensively, because the 2 missed field goals by Sanders and Haydak. I mean, special teams is something that we could talk about for a while here, but those, and then all 3 of those drives that fizzled out easily could have been touchdowns. So there's definitely a lot for Penn State to clean up here going into week 2 against Delaware. But when you look around the Big Ten, I think this is probably one of the bigger and better wins for a Big Ten team this week in week 1. And it's week 1 of the season. All you can ask for is a win, and there's plenty of football left to be played.
And I don't think West Virginia is a bad team, actually. I think this is a much underrated team. People are not giving them a lot of credit. This is a top 10 offensive line. Garrett Green is a gamer. James Franklin said that in his post-game presser. And I think the defense, they were playing a lot of too high safety and controlled. They didn't allow Penn State to dominate on the ground, which I was really surprised at. I thought Singleton and Allen would have dominant days, and collectively they all put together about close to 150 yards, but you didn't have those big breakout runs that I was anticipating. So West Virginia, kudos to you for controlling the ground game the way that you did, but you let the air raid, you let Drew Allar pace the day.
Yeah, I mean, but the rushing attack was still pretty quality for Penn State. I mean, both Singleton and Allen
did a job.
Yeah, it did exactly what it did. It set up a lot of play action tonight. I mean, 4 plays into the game for Penn State. Drew hits Keandre Lambert-Smith going across the field perfectly for a 72, 75-yard touchdown to put up Penn State 7-0. I'll be honest, at that point I was thinking Penn State may be in for, or West Virginia may be in for a rout tonight, but that didn't end up being what happened. But I mean, at the end of the day, like we said, the box score tells what this game was, and that was a game that Penn State really dominated. It wasn't always pretty, but it was a pretty dominant win from start to finish. Like we said, just things that will need to be cleaned up if you're going to beat the likes of Ohio State and Michigan down the road. But all things considered, I'm not sure you have too many negatives out of this win for Penn State.
Now, Delaware is not going to be the most overwhelming opponent. I imagine that Penn State's going to be a 40, maybe even a 50-plus favorite going into the game against the Blue Hens.
It shouldn't be close.
It should not be close, and Penn State is going to get a chance to get Bo Pribula. I don't think Jackson Smolik. I think they want to try to preserve the red shirt, but I'm not here to ask that. What do they need to clean up? What do they need to tune up in that game and clean up going into that game?
Yeah, I think next week the big key is going to be the red zone offense. I mean, if you're going to beat Ohio State and Michigan down the road, you can't have 3 drives fizzle out. I'm not sure if all 3 were in the red zone, but they're all pretty close, if not. You got to clean up that. You got to clean up the special teams. I mean, we talked about Sanders Sayedek's 2 missed field goals, but Riley Thompson shanked his first punt of the night. And then one play that kind of went overlooked, I think, because of what happened just a couple plays later, but Caden Saunders on the first punt of the game for West Virginia took a fair catch at the 5-yard line. Now, you can argue maybe it's a great punt and settles at the 1 or something, but I feel like more times out of not, that's a ball that goes in the end zone. And Penn State's starting at their 25 again instead of their 5. Obviously didn't play a factor here, but against those better teams, that's going to play a factor. So definitely red zone offense, special teams, and I think the defense just kind of clean up some of the smaller things. It was a really strong defensive effort. There's no doubt about that. But
15 points, and the starters only allowed 7.
But there's definitely some things that they're going to have to clean up. They allowed Garrett Green to get loose a couple times. The rush defense at times was not great. C.J. Johnson is one of the bigger backs they're going to face this year at 6'1", 230 pounds.
Oh, converted tight end. He's a big dude.
He's going to be one of the tougher guys they would have to tackle this year. So clean up the rushing attack. Rush defense, I guess, is probably the third big one. But I think beyond that, next week for Penn State, to really just stay healthy and don't get any major injuries heading into the meatier part of your schedule. Because Illinois, I know they've struggled with Toledo today, but that's still going to be a tough opponent in week 3 for the Nittany Lions.
And Toledo is a good MAC team for what it is worth, okay? So people might look at that Illinois score and say, like, we can look past them. I wouldn't. Brett Bielema at home, that's still going to be a tough opponent. Penn State, I would agree with you. I'll add to the defensive line. Chop Robinson in post-game presser said that they did not live up to the standard. I would agree with that. I don't think that Penn State controlled the line of scrimmage defensively. I think it was a back-and-forth battle. It was either 50-50 with a slight lean to West Virginia. So the Mountaineers gave Penn State a lot to handle. Again, I would argue top 15, top 10 even, offensive line in the country for the Mountaineers.
That was a very experienced West Virginia offensive line that James Franklin talked very highly about coming in this week. And they showed why they're such a highly touted team. Highly touted offensive line. And it's going to be an offensive line that is one of the better ones in the Big 12. And like you said, in the country. So that was a good week 1 test for the Penn State defense, defensive line and front 7. Probably didn't get to the quarterback as much as they'd like to, or that we'll see going forward. But definitely one that they could take some positives away from, build from. And the last thing on defense I'll say is the first half defense was definitely, it was good. It wasn't great. But coming out of halftime, that defense did a much better job. Seemed to be much more settled down and limited the extended plays that they were giving up in the first half there.
He's Dylan Callghan-Croley of Penn State Rivals, HappyValleyInsider.com. I'm Zach Seyko, host of the Locked On Nittany Lions podcast, your go-to podcast for HappyValleyInsider.com. I want you to do us a favor. Thank you so much for checking out this video. Thanks so much for watching this. If you can, subscribe to the YouTube channel, Locked On Nittany Lions. Subscribe to Penn State Rivals. Check out HappyValleyInsider.com. They're going to have all the news, the notes, the analysis from this game, and the previews coming up for Penn State against Delaware, then on to Illinois, which is a Big Ten conference game, and that's what matters most to get into the Big Ten championship, because then that's going to lead into the college football playoff. So do all that. Check it all out, and there will be more content here around Penn State football on Locked On Nittany Lions.